Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I'm going to be reviewing another Brandon Sanderson book, and that is Shadows of Self. So Shadows of Self is the second book of Mistborn Era 2, also known as the Wax and Wane series. For those of you who don't know, Mistborn is one of Brandon Sanderson's big series in his interconnected Cosmere universe. And Era 2 is the second Mistborn series that takes place a few hundred years after the original Mistborn trilogy. And also, I just reviewed in my last video, or one of my last videos, The Alloy of Law, which is the book that preceded this, so if you have not seen that, then go check that out. But going into this book, I was really expecting to enjoy it because I really enjoyed Alloy of Law. It was probably on the lower end of Brandon Sanderson's books for me. When it comes to how much I liked it, but even then, even the lower end of his books, I still really love. So I fully expected to enjoy this one as well, and I certainly did. So first, getting into the positives, first of all, I apologize if this feels a little bit repeated from some of the stuff in my Alloy of Law review, because most of the stuff that I liked in this book, I also liked in that book, so there will probably be some overlap, so I do apologize for that. But first of all, I really enjoyed the characters in this book. Once again, I really liked them in the last book, and I loved them even more in this book. Especially Wax and Wane, the two kind of main characters. They had some really impactful, emotional moments in this book, throughout the book, really. Especially Wax, but also Wane had one or two that really hit me. And so that was really good. They were really good characters. They had some nice banter back and forth. I liked their interactions with each other and with other characters and things like that. And there were a number of other great characters in here as well. For example, Marassi, who I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but she was in the first book. I didn't really talk about her in my review, I think, but she was in the first book, and she also plays a big role in this one. You also have Milan, who is a Kandra who appears in this book. And if you've read the original Mistborn trilogy, you know the significance of that race of creatures. And she's in this book. She's a lot of fun. She was really cool. And then I really liked the villain of this book as well. The villain was super interesting. There was some really cool twists and turns that happened with them. At the end of the book, this book has a very big Sanderlanche to it. If you don't know what that term means, it's basically like the climax of Brandon's books. It kind of hits a point where everything just comes together and all the twists happen, and it's like the climax of a book, but it's like more intense than just a climax. At least that's how I kind of think of it. And there are some big twists with the villain in this book that happen that are really interesting and I really enjoyed. And the villain themselves is super cool. Very interesting concept and some interesting stuff going on with them. I also, once again, really loved the world building in this book. As I said in my video for Alloy of Law, this book, or this series, takes place about 300 years after the original Mistborn trilogy, so it's really cool to see how things have advanced within the world of Scadrial, how technology has advanced, how all the people are responding to that. There's actually some bits of technology in this book that are actually emerging by the end of this book, which is kind of cool to see, and I'm interested in seeing how that'll play into the future ones. And just the world building in general, there's some really excellent connections to Era 1 in this book, which I'm not going to really spoil. I probably will do a short spoiler section at the end of this review, unlike Alloy of Law, because there are a couple things in particular I want to talk about. But there were some really cool connections to Era 1 in this book that I really enjoyed. And once again, like in the first book, the action here was excellent. I really enjoyed it a lot. As far as negatives with this book, I don't really have any big ones. However, the only thing that I would say is, like I said earlier, there is quite a big Sanderlanche with this book. And I felt like it went a little too quickly. And even though Brandon is known for his big, epic endings, this one did feel a little rushed to me, but that's really the only big issue I had with this book. So now I'm going to start getting into spoilers, so if you have not read this book before, I assume I will probably put some timestamps in the description so you can skip ahead if you would like to. So if you have not read this book before, I would encourage you to not watch this section for the sake of not being spoiled. So getting into spoilers now. So first of all, the twist at the end, I really enjoyed with the Kandra, who is the villain of this book, which was really cool. Kind of similar to what I mentioned in my Alloy of Law review, with the villain of that book being very interesting, having some interesting stuff going on with them that made me wonder how the crew in this book was going to manage to take down the villain. That was kind of similar in this book as well. And the twists at the end of the Kandra impersonating the governor, and then later being the person that Wax had this connection with that has been built up over the course of the book, and even the last book as well, who he had ended up killing, was a really good twist and made me really feel for Wax, because he was kind of going through that trauma all over again. The only other big spoiler stuff I want to talk about does happen also later in the book. Particularly, and I know exactly when this happened because it blew me away, was chapter 20, which was probably my favorite chapter in the whole book, which I typically don't have a favorite chapter when it comes to most books. But that one really stood out to me for a few reasons. First of all, well, mainly, it was all the connections to Era 1, which on one hand was my favorite chapter because, you know, it's kind of fan service, you know, you get the connections to those old books that I love, but also it just really resonated with me, and I just loved how it was presented. You have Wax going into this place that is reflective of the old, you know, heroes of the age in the past, you know, from Era 1, which was really cool. You had Tensoon, who was the Kandra in Era 1, who was Vin's kind of sidekick, sort of, who appeared in that, which was super cool as well. And all the different connections to Era 1 in that chapter, I loved it. And when or if movies of Mistborn eventually get made, which I'm very excited to hopefully happen, I could just see in my mind's eye that scene and just how I envisioned it and everything, and it just, I don't know, something about that chapter and those scenes really, really resonated with me. But ending spoilers now, so no more spoilers from this point onward. So my overall thoughts on this book are really positive. I really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed this one more than Alloy of Law, I would say. Not by a huge amount, but I did enjoy it a little bit more. It is probably not quite one of my favorite Brandon Sanderson books, but it's like, even like my mid-tier or even my low-tier Brandon Sanderson books are still some of my favorite books of all time, so, you know, that's not saying too much. As far as a rating out of 10 that I would give this book, I would give it a 9, which was slightly more than the last book, which I think I gave an 8.5. So I really enjoyed this one a lot. It was just lots of fun all the way through. I really enjoyed the plot. I really enjoyed the characters, the world building, the twists at the end, all that stuff. Super fun read. I really enjoyed it. But anyways, that is pretty much it for this review. So let me know down in the comments if you have read this book and what you thought of it, if so, and all that stuff. And as I said in my last review, where I said I was going to be going through this book after Alloy of Law, I'm going to be following this one up with The Bands of Mourning, so you can expect a review for that book on the channel soon as well. And that's pretty much it for this video, so thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.